Let's get these doors shut. We've got a very important meeting, and I want to use our time. I'm going to go ahead and wrap up any kind of conversations, and let's kind of get focused on our meeting. This time I call our natural resource meeting to order. I would like to see if Senator Turner, would you do us honor leading us in prayer this morning?
Yeah. Lord, we thank you for being able to be here today. We always thank you for the blessings you both bestow upon us and the help that you.
The roll. Do I have any members that have any special guests that you would like to introduce in the audience? I know all of our guests are special, but I want to give any member a chance. And do I have any member that has any special announcements that you'd like to make? Okay, seeing none, I'll ask the clerk to call the roll.
Senator Chambers Armstrong, Senator Carpenter, Senator Mills, Senator Schickel.
Senator Schickel's there at the door. Somebody see if Senator Schickel wants to vote aye.
Senator Schickel. Here. Senator Southworth.
Here.
Senator Webb. Senator Westerfield. Here. Senator Wheeler. Here. Senator Williams.
Aye. Here.
Senator Turner.
Here.
And Chair Smith.
I'm present. We have quorum.
Yes.
Robert Stiver, Senate President and Senator from the 25th Senatorial District.
Robbie Mills, State Senator from the 4th District.
Philip Wheeler, Senator from Pike 31.
Steve West, Senate, 27th District.
It's like an all-star cast here. So assume Senator Mills, you'll be speaking for the crowd to get it started, or?
I will.
Very good.
Mr. Chairman, we do have a sub before the committee if we can go ahead and take care of that.
Ask for adoption of the sub. Motion?
Motion.
Second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Side of aye, aye. Opposed likewise, it carries. We'll be speaking to the sub.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Got a few comments, and I'll let my guests here speak to whatever they'd like to speak to as well after we make our opening comments. Mr. Chairman, we believe that the long-term economic health and well-being of the citizens of the Commonwealth and the United States depends upon the availability of reliable sources of energy, and the current economy and future economic development of the Commonwealth requires reliable, resilient, dependable, abundant supplies of electrical power. To help ensure that Kentucky continues to have reliable, dependable, and abundant electrical power, Senate Bill 349 establishes the Energy Planning and Inventory Commission. This commission will consist of 18 board members and 5 executive committee members, each with specific expertise in their energy sector. Each member shall be appointed by the governor and confirmed by the Senate. Mr. Chairman, the EPIC Commission will be tasked with studying all the issues surrounding energy reliability, such as the adequacy of our existing electric generation, Kentucky's anticipated future electric demand, the operation or retirement of an electric generation unit, the economic impact of energy production, the economic impact of decommissioning a unit, the energy grid's response to severe weather events, the effects of federal energy policy on Kentucky's energy economy, Kentucky's ability to participate in production, transmission, and distribution of electricity, and any other issue that they deem necessary to help energy reliability in Kentucky. Additionally, The EPIC Executive Committee shall be given notice by any utility 365 days prior to a plant or unit retirement application submission to the PSC. The Executive Committee shall have 270 days to conduct an independent review of the proposed unit or plant retirement, which will conclude with findings of fact and recommendations. These findings shall be submitted to the PSC. No utility shall apply to the PSC for retirement of a plant or unit without first going through the EPIC review process and findings being forwarded to the PSC. Mr. Chairman, that is Section 1. Section 2 and 3 of this bill sets forth some statutory deadlines for certain PSC cases to avoid regulatory delays and sets forth new transparency requirements for PSC contracted persons. And then finally, Section 4 of the bill, which is the last section, adds to Senate Bill 4 language from last year the requirement that replacement generation shall have the same or higher capacity value and net capability unless the utility can demonstrate it is not needed to provide a reliable service. It also adds that the utility shall not commence retirement or decommissioning of an electric generation unit until the replacement generating capacity is fully constructed, permitted, and in operation, unless the utility can demonstrate it is not needed to provide a reliable service. Mr. Chairman, Senate Bill 349 simply requires due diligence and a thorough review to ensure existing capacity is not retired too quickly and that any new or replacement generation is ready to meet Kentucky's energy needs. Mr. Chairman, that is our opening comments and kind of review of the bill. I'll ask if Senator Stivers would like to make some comments.
Please, Senator Stivers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. EPIC is an acronym that I think is very apropos in this situation. If you look at what has been said and done in and around Kentucky, we are having some pretty good times, and I think it's based on many types of policies that have been instituted over the last 8 to 10 years that have put us on this trajectory of growth. But when you start looking at that, nobody has really sat back and looked at what the energy demands are going to be. You and I have had this discussion within the caucus, what they are for what we now know, but probably more so what we don't know in the realm of AI, the whole crypto currency issue, data mining, all the other things that have gone on, not to mention the fact that we are on the edge of a total change in propulsion of our vehicles. And with that, over the months, we have had many, many discussions about our future year energy demands, and it is not being looked at. I have written op-eds and letters to the newspapers and every member of the Kentucky General Assembly about thoughts on this. Most people only know that you flip the switch on and the light comes on, or they see a bill at the end of the month that reminds them about that. But nobody really understands the intricacies of energy generation and energy dispatchability. So this is an attempt to start putting in place a committee that would look at future years and estimate future year demands and make sure that we stay reliable, cost efficient, competitive, and keep people here who are here and be able to attract individuals and companies here because of the low energy costs and demands that are reliable. I personally have had discussions probably over the last 9 months with various entities, from the industrial consumers to individual co-ops, some investor-owns. This is an attempt to really focus in on energy because it is what makes and drives our economy. We are not here today in this room without energy. You do not move down the road without energy. You do not have plant production without energy. And so this is truly the cutting edge issue for the next many years. And hopefully we will have a commission that will specifically focus on, and in the context of whether you believe in it or not, decarbonization or global warming. That's part of the discussion. But this is a really good attempt, and it will be a work in process, in my opinion, of how we move forward in the next few years and in the next few days, kind of deciphering and creating what would be this commission. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee.
Very good. And we've got, just to make a comment here, in the old days, as the Senate President and I both can remember, you would have industry come to your community. And what they were looking for, actually Senator Wheeler is a part of this as well, they would look at our spec buildings. They would want to know, for example, if we had a building built, that's the first thing industry would ask for. Now it's the last. The very first thing they ask for, my utility people will agree when they come to your town, is how much is the power cost? How much is it per kilowatt? Because that's going to decide everything else. They don't even care about the building anymore. But let's ask ourselves why. In the tech revolution that's happening right now across the globe, the people with power that's affordable and reliable and dependable are going to be the winners. And it doesn't matter about crypto. Let's just look at technology. If you're a company that repairs technology, if you're going to compete in the CHIPS Act, or you've got industry out there, you could have 5,000 to 6,000 machines at any given time running diagnostics off of a grid. Now that's not mining or crypto. That's actually doing a diagnostics to get something up for 48 hours to where everything in it gets warm enough that it's going to fail. It's going to fail there. So the tech companies that are looking at Kentucky need to know that they have the power available. Now, you drive through most of these industrial parks, and you're not going to see the type of electrical gear that's needed. It's a straight up fact, not for what big industry is looking for. But if Kentucky can build that, and then we can back it up with having an affordable rate, and I will tell you, 22 cents per kilowatt hour in an industrial park in Jenkins is not an effective rate. So we know that we've got to do better. I've watched the Senate President all summer. If you followed, I guess, social media, this has been something I can tell he's really been engaged in, probably more so than I've seen him in something for a long time, because it's the critical issue of our era. This energy something is we have to get this right. And if we do, there's a bounty for Kentucky to be able to attract industry that comes in and pays $64 an hour. That has bonuses and health insurance and stuff that we would love to see across all of Kentucky, specifically me speaking for the eastern part of the state. But with that said, gentlemen, because I do have so many people signed up to speak, I have some people here from Duke Energy, LG&E. Oh, Senator Westerfield. Let me finish this list real quick, please. So we have some people that I'm sure are going to speak for it. And since we are already halfway into our meeting here, if they want to come to the table now, or if they feel like everything's need to be said, we can waive that, because I do have people that would like to speak against it, and then I'd like to yield back to you all. So if any of the groups that are here supporting you want to speak now, you're welcome to. And that would be, it looks like Amy Spiller, John Crockett, Tammy Wilson, and I believe Brian Gary, and if I've said your name wrong, I apologize. Byron, sorry. Thank you. Yeah. It's actually the staff, they spelled it wrong, so it's not.
Happens all the time.
But if you'd like to come speak now, let's make every effort to use our time wisely. And if I've left anyone out of this particular group right here, that those are going to speak against or have an issue, I'm going to have you up next. Okay, so I'm going to turn it over to you guys, give you about 10 minutes here. So please identify yourself for our records, and I'll turn it over to you.
You might clarify that.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, President Stivers, members of the committee, and a point of clarification, if I may, sir. The panel that's before you today will actually offer testimony in opposition to Senate Bill 349.
Thank you for that. When we have guest lists sign up, it really doesn't have any box on there for us to know, so I was just kind of going on what my assumptions were, so I apologize if those were wrong.
Thank you very much. My name is Amy Spiller, and I am the state president of Duke Energy, Ohio, and Kentucky. In my role, I have the privilege of leading many talented men and women who work tirelessly every single day to safely and reliably deliver power to our customers in northern Kentucky. This is a mission that we have carried out for well over a century. But our employees' ability to do their job today and into the future will be compromised by Senate Bill 349. This is a bill that would create needless review by a new governmental authority comprised of many members having pre-existing biases, an authority that cannot accomplish its predetermined operational objective without jeopardizing reliability, affordability, and blunting Kentucky's economic growth. We understand that the Commonwealth is grappling with how to address the concerns of reliability and resource adequacy and how those affect Kentucky's future. And we welcome these conversations because we know the critical role that access to reliable, affordable power plays in Kentucky's future. But the issues impacting the provision of safe, reliable, resilient electric service in the Commonwealth are complex, and one cannot responsibly evaluate the issues by narrowly concentrating on one input, one fuel source, to the exclusion of all other inputs. An appropriate examination of the issues demands consideration of the many factors that impact the ability to deliver power to and through the Commonwealth. For example, one must reconcile that there is federal jurisdiction over transmission. There are two regional transmission organizations, or RTOs, that oversee the flow of electricity both into and through Kentucky. There are state and federal environmental regulations that affect the operation of generating assets, and market prices for energy that change in near 5-minute increments. If lawmakers truly intend an all of the above approach to advance the long-term economic health and well-being of their constituents, they must encourage a comprehensive and collaborative conversation around resource adequacy and deliverability. Such an approach is necessary to avoid the otherwise unintended consequences that would serve to make the grid less reliable and more expensive for Kentuckians.
If I could, I just want to kind of ask you a question here, if I could.
Yes, sir.
Considering the current situation that we're in, following the model that's in place without these changes, we are facing rolling blackouts, brownouts, letters going out to industry in Kentucky, which I won't name, that will say, the good news for you all is you're going to be able to tell us and schedule your power outages. I have to point out that's really not a really good situation to find ourselves in, and that's where we're at right now. So I think it's fair to say that there needs to be some adjustment, some change in the formula, so that businesses in Kentucky have better confidence in what we are doing as far as legislators. This is a great committee for all the above. I mean, we get heat because we push so many different opportunities in here for every energy source in the state. But I just take issue a little bit with the fact that what we're seeing right now is not working. And I think the reason that the members that were just at that table have waded into it is because it's honestly a mess, and it needs to be fixed. People in Kentucky need to have power. We're an energy-rich state. This should not be experiencing brownouts, blackouts, or honestly increases in our utility rate of up to 18% requests recently. So I do take a little bit of issue with that. And just to give everybody their table time, you guys have got about 7 minutes left. So I will turn it back over to you.
And Mr. Chairman, I will respond to your question and then cede the balance of this time to others on this panel. I agree with you that we need a study, a comprehensive, collaborative conversation, but one that a group that cannot be artificially weighted toward one preference. So we would actually suggest a working group, but include within that working group the utilities, the RTOs, our fuel suppliers, regulators, lawmakers, and consumers, so that we can all all collaborate and discuss these issues that are affecting Kentucky. We cannot simply suggest that an aging and antiquated unit must be kept online to solve all of the future growth needs in the Commonwealth. And we encourage what would be a collaborative conversation on this point.
Very good.
Mr. Chairman, good morning. John Crockett on behalf of LG&E and KU Energy. Thanks to you and the members for hearing us this morning. We at LG&E and KU serve more than 1 million Kentuckians, gas and electric. We serve more than 40% of the electric customers in the state. We are not part of a regional transmission organization. We do not rely on the markets. We have steel in the ground, fossil fuel generation to serve our customers in this state and their energy demands. We have an obligation which we take seriously, and that is to serve our customers reliably, safely, and affordably. And we've done so for more than 70 years on the basis of a least reasonable cost standard. That has served Kentuckians well for a long time. We don't make retirement decisions or replacement generation decisions on the basis of the fuel source. Instead, we rely on reasonable least cost. In the interest of Kentuckians.
If I could ask, I mean, here's what and I want to be clear. I'm not picking on you all. I understand that you all have to dance to a federal mandate in a lot of cases where you're punished if it was true. If you went with the most affordable, reliable, without having any sort of federal penalties or fees or all the stuff that's placed on it, if you choose, say, coal over natural gas or natural gas over something else, we all know that's weighted and that you all have to factor that into, and that is interference. That is where somebody is putting their finger on the scale, and then you all have to factor in what it's going to cost you to use these, even though Henry Hub will show coal very often, it's still extremely competitive. But it's not when you add all the other stuff that you have to dance to if you're going to use that fuel source. So in all fairness, you all are caught in a trap, which we understand. But we all we know what's going on here, but it is very difficult with the federal government weighing in and tipping the scales, and that's causing a problem, and it's failing. It's failing Kentucky, but we'll turn it back over to you. But we are all aware of the situation with this.
With all due respect, Mr. Chairman, we make our decisions based on least cost, and those costs are part of what is our regulatory and environmental obligation imposed by the feds and elsewhere. That has to go into the cost equation. There's no question about that. Like Duke, we recommend a working group. We are happy to participate in that. The Public Service Commission's well-established and rigorous regulatory process already allows for input as these commissioners would be having in the process. For example, just in the last year, we completed a year-long process in which there were intervening parties from the Kentucky Coal Association to the Sierra Club, the cities of Louisville and Lexington, the Attorney General, low-income advocacy groups. It was a year-long process. It was a rigorous process, tens of thousands of documents produced. It's just another layer of bureaucracy that I fear we're talking about here. The commission's makeup, let me speak to that just a moment. It would be frankly, inherently a political body made up of 18 people, only 2 of whom have the obligation to serve Kentucky energy customers. The balance is a collection of special interests, whether it be fuel producers, sellers, transporters, nuclear interests, renewables crowd, that would seek to promote their own agendas as part of this process. That's what we think that we're going to get into here. As well, the executive committee is the only part of the commission that has any authority. It's a 5-person committee. It cannot contain, by definition, a member of the utility industry. Yeah. I'm sorry.
Responding, I had a question a few minutes ago, and I had forgot to acknowledge Senator Westerfield,
Okay.
but I am at this moment. Senator Westerfield, please go ahead and ask your question. I apologize.
It was for the panel of our colleagues, so I could wait.
Sorry for that.
Okay. In any event, Mr. Chairman, I want to save some time here, but we in this room know better than anybody else the fuel issues associated with the state. We're the state's largest consumer of fossil fuels. Our fleet is likely to be 90% fossil fuels for years and years to come, and we are and continue to be the single largest purchaser of coal. That is not going to change. We are going to be in this business for a long time, and please understand that we take our obligation to serve the customers of Kentucky seriously. I tell you what, I'm going to stop and turn it over since we're out of time. But thank you for your time here this morning. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Thank you for this opportunity to speak to you today. My name is Tammy Wilson. I'm the Vice President of Public Affairs at the Northern Kentucky Chamber of Commerce. I'm here today representing nearly 1,800 members of our chamber, 85% of which are small businesses, the backbone of our economy. Over the past decade, Northern Kentucky increased its contribution to Kentucky's GDP by 42%, surpassing any other part of our great Commonwealth. We attribute this success to various factors, including access to low-cost, reliable energy. Today, I come before you to express our concerns regarding Senate Bill 349. As currently written, Senate Bill 349 has significant implications for economic development. The proposed legislation creates duplicative government oversight and prioritizes one fuel source over reliability and affordability. Additionally, it creates a new commission that serves as a barrier to transitioning to natural gas, which will be cheaper for our communities. Natural gas also helps attract investment from companies, particularly manufacturers, to Kentucky because of the low energy costs. Many companies also demand a cleaner, more reliable form of energy in addition to low-cost electricity to meet their own missions and goals. While we empathize with Eastern Kentucky and the loss of jobs associated with the coal industry, we feel strongly that forcing our members and potential members to pay more for their energy simply to ensure we continue to support the coal industry is not a reasonable ask of the Northern Kentucky region. One of the first questions companies ask when considering relocating to Kentucky is whether or not the local energy providers can serve them with cleaner forms of energy generation. As a Chamber of Commerce deeply committed to the prosperity of our region and our state, we believe it is essential to maintain policies that foster a business-friendly climate. Senate Bill 349 in its current form does not align with this principle. In conclusion, I urge you to carefully consider the potential unintended consequences of Senate Bill 349 on the economy and Kentucky's businesses. We respectfully oppose the legislation and ask you to vote no today. Thank you for your time and service to the Commonwealth.
And thank you all for your comments. Amy and John both, I want you to know we're very proud of the record your all's company has in our state. And you do a fantastic job. You have a big load. I want to make sure we understand the burden that you all get caught in the pickle between the state and the federal intervening in your business. And I think less government's better. So I don't want you to take our comments out there. We feel like you are stuck with a lot of federal mandates that put you in a tough spot, and they're not the best interest, in my opinion, for our grid or for the ratepayer. And so I think that's what you're seeing here. That's not on you. That's something that's being pushed down to you. But it's limited of how we can fight back. But thank you all for your time. If there's any time at the end that you want to say something, we will yield back to you. I have two other guests that I'd like to have come up. Byron Gary, right? Get it right this time. And looks like McNeil. I wasn't even going to try that one. Yeah. Thank you all for your patience. We'll turn it over. And just the effort of time, you guys have about 7 minutes. You can split it however you want to.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, committee members, for the time to speak to you today. Again, my name is Audrey Ernstberger. I'm a staff attorney and lobbyist for Kentucky Resources Council, a nonprofit and nonpartisan group of lawyers, policy experts, and advocates working for environmental quality, justice, and health across the Commonwealth. And I'll allow my colleague to introduce himself at this time.
Morning, Byron Gary, program attorney with Kentucky Resources Council. I regularly practice before the Public Service Commission, representing a group of groups commonly called the Joint Interveners, that includes low-income advocates, solar advocates, and others. I don't have any testimony. I'm only here to answer any technical questions in that regard.
Welcome to our committee. Senator Wheeler, you have a comment? Well, okay, yeah, after they were going to speak, and then we're going to have our panel come back to the table, so we'll turn it over to you all, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There are three major issues with this bill that I would like to address. Many of them were addressed by the previous panel. The first is that it could jeopardize the affordability of electricity for utility ratepayers, impair and interfere with the Public Service Commission decision-making process, and create structural conflicts of interest through the creation of the Energy Planning and Inventory Commission. First, this bill would end Kentucky's long-held energy policy that has governed utility regulation that utilities should meet the electricity needs of ratepayers through the most reasonable, lowest cost option, whether that new generation is from coal, from natural gas, renewables, or through energy efficiency. We agree that there is a need for an all of the above energy resources policy to meet electricity demands, but SB 349 revises the Public Service Commission rules and standards in a way that will thwart the diversification of utility generation profiles to incorporate more renewables and increase the burden on utility ratepayers by imposing new delays and barriers to the retirement of uneconomic units by disallowing the replacement of that capacity with renewable energy, the increasingly low-cost option. The reasonable low-cost standard has served the state well, yet this bill jettisons the standard, and in doing so will invariably increase cost to the ratepayers. As our national perspective changes to require accounting for pollution and the cost of our fuel sources, natural gas and renewable energy sources are increasingly surpassing coal as the affordable, lowest cost option. This bill is notably silent on the issue of affordability as it prioritizes reliable, resilient, dependable, and abundant energy, but it specifically excludes renewable power from being considered in resource planning as replacements for the aging and uneconomic fossil fuel electricity plants. Even if the General Assembly doesn't include affordability in its priorities, renewable power should be included for the purposes of reliability, especially considering the experience during Winter Storm Elliott, which involved failures of natural gas delivery and deratings for several coal plants, and resulted in the subsequent purchase of wind power from MISO to help keep the lights on. Considering this, no source of power should be categorically discounted, like the previous panel mentioned. Second, the bill impairs the Public Service Commission's decision-making process. It would impose an unworkable 6-month deadline on PSC decisions, resulting in rush and less thorough decisions on complex issues affecting essential utility service to residential, commercial, and industrial consumers.
And I just want to add here, I think that's a good point that you make, but from what I understand from the Public Service Commission is they have been discussing with the group, Senator Stivers, many others, of ways of providing maybe additional funds for either staffing or whatever, and I won't go into that, but that was an issue I saw as well, but it's one that I'm being told from both sides they're working it out. So.
Well, thank you very much, Chairman. We certainly appreciate that efforts from the sponsor and the PSCs, from the sponsors and the PSC itself, and we look forward to seeing that language. Moving on from that, it would also impact the ability of PSC to use consultants to assist in the evaluation of cases by subjecting those consultants to cross-examination, even though they're producing no evidence that would be relied on in a case. It's unlikely that the consultants would accept employment under such conditions. The last point I'd like to bring up is our points relating to the creation of the new Energy Planning and Inventory Commission, the EPIC. It's imbued with structural conflicts of interest and creates procedural problems. For example, the board is stacked with representatives of energy sectors that have a financial interest in advocating against the retirement of fossil fuel plants and have an inherent conflict of interest by virtue of the interest that they are appointed to represent, while including only one slot for residential customers who will bear the costs of continued operation of uneconomic generating plants and the increased cost of replacement of those units with uneconomic fossil-fired units. The new commission would produce reports and recommendations that under the current rules could not be considered by the commission without sworn testimony and an opportunity for other parties to cross-examine. This statute would violate the due process rights of other parties by requiring the commission to consider a report developed by a non-party who is not subject to discovery or cross-examination. It empowers the new Planning and Inventory Commission to consider numerous issues that the PSC has considered to be outside its jurisdiction, such as external economic impacts, like the impact of generation retirements on local communities and governments. Yet it does not consider other important issues such as public health, climate change impacts, and environmental justice. In conclusion, we fear the bill would game the regulatory process against renewable energy that is in fact dispatchable and clean in favor of retaining uneconomic, polluting, age-old fossil fuel plants in a manner that will make it more costly and lengthy in our inevitable transition to lower carbon, renewable energy future. It erodes the state policy of meeting ratepayers' needs in the lowest cost, most reasonable fashion, and by interfering with commission decisions to help protect the market share of coal interests. And that concludes our comments today. Thank you again for the opportunity to present.
Very good. And I apologize. Andrew McNeil is here. Andrew, will you come to the table? I have a few minutes for you. Then I'm going to ask my original panel to come back. And if I do have time at the end, I promise I'll yield back to anybody that still has a statement to make. Andrew, while you're taking the table, Senator Wheeler has a question. But now you're going
I was interested in some of your comments that you're an advocate for poor people and consumers. I mean, it amazes me because I come from one of the poorest districts in the state, and it seems like the policies that you all are advocating have driven the electric cost of my people through the roof. And we've seen this in other parts of the world, too. I spent a year teaching in Germany. I regularly speak to people over there. Their economy is now contracting at 0.2%, and one of the main reasons is high energy costs brought about by the very policies that you all are advocating. People over there are having problems buying homes, affording cars, even commuting because of the high energy costs that is directly related to the types of policies that you all are advocating, while our foreign adversaries like China are putting on a new coal plant every 2 to 3 weeks and are quickly becoming the lowest cost producer while not being environmentally responsible, and we get most of the pollution in the United States carried over by the Gulf Stream. So tell me exactly, how are your policies making life easier for poor people?
Thank you so much for your question, Senator Wheeler. And we are certainly interested and empathetic towards Eastern Kentucky, the ratepayers who struggle the most with being able to pay the cost of high electric. And again, like Senator Smith, Chairman Smith, acknowledged, there is a struggle between federal and state interests. And we represent
and most of that federal
ratepayers.
struggle has been caused by you all suing and then getting people these bureaucrats that inhabit the Federal Environmental Cabinet to agree to consent orders, which is driving up electric costs all across the United States of America. Is that not correct?
Listen, it's a good point. Let's keep the decorum of the meeting. Just come back to the chair, and I appreciate the passion from the senator, but go ahead and finish so we can yield to Mr. McNeil.
Thank you, Senator. And Senator Wheeler, thank you for your passion for your constituents. I see and appreciate and respect your zealous advocacy for your constituents. We represent the ratepayers, and in the advocacy that we perform in front of the PSC, it's using federal standards for energy generators here in the state who have a direct impact on those ratepayers. We can acknowledge the struggle on both sides, but we're interested in the immediate impacts on ratepayers who right now are saddled with unaffordable electric costs.
Thanks in many ways.
Amen to that. Let's go ahead and let Andrew go ahead and come to the table. Most of us know who you are, but please go ahead and identify you and your guests for your table. And I apologize, I've only got about 3 minutes for you. Andrew, turn your mic on, please. Sorry.
It's my colleague, Sarah Durand. Yep. We're a free policy, market-oriented organization, and we have a role as a taxpayer watchdog. And we believe in this case, a watchdog for electricity ratepayers. And we agree with many people on this committee that Kentucky's coal industry has been under assault from the federal government for years. And if the intent of this legislation was to push back on that, we'd be 100% supportive of that effort. However, what Senate Bill 349 does is create a new bureaucracy, which is going to translate into government overreach at the state level. That will end up raising the cost of electricity for Kentuckians. Chairman Smith, Senator Webb, we've been talking about energy policy for a number of years now. I first started working in energy policy during the mid-2000s, and during that time, coal represented 90% of the state's electricity portfolio. It was the least cost option, and clean coal technologies were expected to keep it that way. However, environmental compliance with federal clean air regulations has and will continue to drive up the cost of coal-fired electricity. That's just going to be a fact of life. And as important, and what we didn't quite realize at the time, technology has unlocked the nation's natural gas resources. The abundance of natural gas has positioned that fuel to provide affordable and reliable baseload power. As a result, facilitating the transition from coal to natural gas is in the best interest of consumers. But this bill creates impediments to that transition, and ratepayers will be the ones bearing the cost of those barriers. Senate Bill 349 creates a new bureaucracy with a mandate that either duplicates what the Public Service Commission currently does or could do. I'll give you two examples, Mr. Chairman, to keep it short. The bill directs the Energy Commission to evaluate whether there are alternatives to the proposed decommissioning of a power plant. The Public Service Commission already evaluates multiple scenarios to determine the most appropriate path forward for utilities to meet their obligations to their customers. The PSC undertakes the task through a thorough and very sophisticated analysis. I've read some recent decisions, and it's really quite impressive. 100 plus pages of input, analysis, and rationale for their decision. Neither side usually or almost always never gets everything they want out of the process, which is strong evidence that the process works. Senate Bill 349 directs this new commission to conduct a public hearing to receive public comments in a county where the closing of a power
Andrew,
plant is proposed.
I'm sorry, brother. Could you wrap
I'm going
your
to
comments? I could yield, and I do apologize.
One more minute. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To this issue of all of the above energy strategy and how this commission and the executive committee does not reflect it. One position on the executive committee is reserved for the coal industry. There isn't a seat on the executive committee for natural gas representatives, somebody with expertise in renewables, or residential electricity consumers. Only coal. We'd recommend that you strike the authority of the executive committee, leave any authority to the commission, and probably engage in the study that you've heard recommended from some other people who have testified today. I want to just make one last point, and thank you.
I'm going to have the other committee come back up, and I really, really do apologize. But if I have any time at the end, I promise I'll yield back to you. But I have so many
30
members
more
that have
seconds.
questions. I'll give you 10.
The cost of this commission are going to be borne by ratepayers in Northern Kentucky, Jefferson County, and 120 counties in the state. Hardin County, Madison County, Shelby County, they're going to pay higher electricity rates because of 349. We recommend that you pass over the bill, bring together more stakeholders, and examine the possibility of a study going forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you again. I
Thank
do
you.
apologize.
Yep, thank you, Chairman.
I want to make sure all my members have a chance to ask their questions. So I'll ask all the original sponsors to come back to the table. You all have heard a lot and heard testimony. If you'd like to respond, take a few minutes, and then I'll have questions.
Well, I had to go back and get the bill out to see if I read it. But I want to say this. If you look at subsection C of the first page, it lists every possible known, even unknown energy sources. This is not a coal-focused issue. The reality is we know there are potential alternative fuels out there, and this is the attempt to create exactly what everybody's talking about, a study group from all sectors of the energy society. As to the role of the PSC, I think Mr. McNeil wrongfully stated what their role is. They don't get into the things. They look at rate and rate cases. They don't get into the other alternatives. They don't look, Senator Webb, at the impacts of when you shut down and have 40,000 people out-migrate. Therefore, the fixed costs are then increased on those who stayed there and drives up, and then on top of that, see the decommissioning fee. These things are what this group is to look at, alternatives. And if you want to know how bad it got, let's go back to Storm Elliott, where there was rolling brownouts. Let's go to this most recent Martin Luther King weekend, where we had a serious cold spell, and both RTOs, both grids, were virtually at capacity, and where there was renewable energy in Illinois, supposedly clean energy, understanding the grid. Yeah, Illinois is clean, but they were taking all the carbon-based generation fuels, taking it from all the other states, going into Illinois because it consumed a downward vortex of consumption of the energy that was produced in Indiana, Ohio, everybody else who is on that Midwestern grid. That's why there needs to be this group. I don't disagree with John or any of the people saying this, but if you want to see the higher energy costs are being driven by exactly what Senator Wheeler talked about, regulations at the federal level that are putting the IOUs at a competitive disadvantage to reliable, renewable gas, oil, whatever it may be, nuclear. So that's what this is about, because the PSC only has limited jurisdiction. And this is the effort, and a lot of other people involved in this. The co-ops support this effort. So this is a valid, good faith attempt to have an energy discussion, and you can see the impacts of it and the need for it soon. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee.
If I could, I'm going to go through some of my members that have questions. Senator Westerfield, I'll yield to you, and then Senator Webb, you're on.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Really quickly, and respond however you'd like. And I'm sure you haven't seen it. I just got it as we sat down in here. But the Energy Environment Cabinet sent a letter, and it was signed by the Secretary and by PSC Chairman. And it rattled off a handful of issues, and there were a couple that I at least wanted to have it give you a chance to respond to once I get my words out. One is the cost for the commission itself, the report that's got to compile, the staff it's going to have, the costs for PSC, and whether or not they have adequate staff. They cite the fact that the bill doesn't include an appropriation, and they mention a $1.5 million need. I have no information about whether or not that's legitimate or backed up, but they put it on their cabinet letterhead, so I assume they trust that number. And then they mentioned, and this might be a question when we've got more time, or we can talk after the fact. When you have a chance to see it, they also mentioned the evidentiary value of the commission reports that this bill would require. And I'd be curious to know your all's response on that. Again, you need to see their explanation, and I don't want to take committee time to go into that. But if you want to respond to the cost question at least.
Sure. Thank you. I did receive about a half-a-page letter from Chairman Chandler about concerns with the bill, and I've told him that we would work through those, and those specific things were listed with him. So we're going to work through those in the process, but he is concerned about the cost and having enough staff to take care of this.
Mr. Chair, if I could, as to the cost appropriations, as every bill we've done, Senator Westerfield, you understand that we generally don't put the appropriation in there. That's done within the budget bill. So very much is that on the radar to make sure to implement this. And this is where I think government does step in to do what the individual can't, and that is to guarantee them the lowest, most reliable energy that is dispatchable. And that is what we are here to do.
Senator Webb.
Thank you. I said here, I'm a former coal miner, but when I was working underground, I had a passive solar house built, and I've always believed in diversification. I've had the opportunity to serve on several national panels and intense panels from energy producing states of all sorts, and I've got 2 energy degrees, so I could talk about this all day, but I won't. I'll spare you. But I appreciate the discussion. Okay, we've got to discuss this. The president and I have talked about energy policy for decades here. You, and here we are. We're having a discussion, and it is a work in progress. And I know you'll be hear the concerns that we've talked about today sometimes. But I sit here and I hear these things, like there's some these companies want cleaner energy. What utopian plan do they want? And how it's not sustainable, it's not efficient, it's not reliable. The consensus nationally is diversification is required because of the accessibility, reliability, affordability, and then you've got the whole other issue of the grid, which it doesn't matter how much energy you produce if you don't have a reliable grid. And I hear this social awareness, clean energy, but it's not sustainable. So if you're selling it to a company coming in, you're selling them a bill of goods that you ain't. So these conversations are very important, And I'm glad we're having it. And I'm going to vote for this measure because it is a work in progress, and we're still learning. We're learning from other countries. We're learning from states across the United States, and the conversation's got to continue. And yes, I'm an East Kentuckian. I'm sorry. We've carried this state for generations. We have made it what it is by the sweat and toil of our coal miners, by our coal industry, by our electric generation, and everybody's benefited from our low electric rates for the toil of East Kentucky. So I'm not going to sit here today and let them be discounted. My people shouldn't have to move. They shouldn't have to go broke. They shouldn't have to downsize to pay their electric bill. And I'm one of them. And I'm going to stay there and fight for my people. So I'm glad we're having this conversation, and I'll support the measure.
Thank you. Senator Wheeler, I had to cut you short before. I'm yielding to you now. Sorry.
Well,
about
Mr.
that.
Chairman, and I thank you for the time. And I mean, I think this is a very rational, balanced bill. And I was a little bit at a loss when I was heard that the gas producers are not included. I mean, if you look on page 5, subsection 4, one representative of the Kentucky oil and gas producers nominated by KOGA. You have a member representing producers of renewable electricity. This is an all of the above bill. But what it's not, I heard, one of the representatives from the investor-owned utilities talk about a bias and a pre-existing bias in this bill. Let's talk about pre-existing bias. While they were sitting up there, I Googled their parent companies, and every single one of them has a whole web page about ESG and how they're going to get to net zero, and that they're working towards the elimination of fossil fuels within their portfolio. So let's talk about bias. That's bias, and that's not the government. That's their corporate statements. So we have an obligation as the representatives of the Commonwealth of Kentucky, not only to protect our citizens from the federal overreach, but also to protect them from corporate overreach, to make sure that they get reliable, cheap energy, and that they have the same economic opportunities as folks everywhere else. This bill is an all-the-above strategy. It's not needless review. It's a review by Kentuckians for a Kentucky First energy policy. And I'm proud to sit here as a co-sponsor of this bill.
Very good. I have two other members that have requested to be to speak, and that's Senator Turner is next, and then I have Armstrong on deck.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Gentlemen, I appreciate this bill you all presented here today, and it's obvious that the people that testified before you have been all these other hearings and cross-examinations we've placed upon the people that admitted that these industries have tax stockholders, that the government is giving them bonuses to get rid of the cheap electricity that we had all these years, and that it's a stacked deck. And then for me to sit here and hear one individual say, I guess, that they're the only one in the room that really needs to know what's to be done, that really bothers me. What you ought to have created here is what we've needed for years. A study group that's made up of all of what my good friend from 29, Mr. Wheeler there said, Senator Wheeler, the whole group is going to be involved. So I appreciate what you've done. I'm like some of the others. I've been in the coal mines, worked in the coal mines myself, and had many brothers work in it. But that's not what it issue. We had that gas, the issue of gas was brought up. We had that group in, and it shut it down because of one valve. 300-some thousand people don't even have an electronic system, but you can get a beep on your phone from Memphis, Tennessee when some kid gets kidnapped. How many people were on machines that could have died during that? So it's an all-around purpose job what you all are creating, and not being biased and prejudiced. I really appreciate the bill, and I'm going to support it fully. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Very good. Senator Chambers Armstrong.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I know we're short on time, so I just have one question. I'm curious about the 6-month limitation in the bill to require PSC cases to be resolved within 6 months. I know you all got into a little bit of an exchange with the chairman. Help me understand, I see a lot of lawyers at the table, how you're going to be able to protect all the interest and procedural rights of all the different parties in a 6-month period.
Yes, that was one of the concerns the PSC had about that timing. Those concerns are, we're just trying to get past a long delay, and get to some kind of, termination point to where an electric utility can know that they're going to hear from the PSC. So we're we will have continued discussions with Mr. Chandler about those issues.
If I could, Mr. Chair, in response to that.
Yes, please do.
This was a discussion, and Senator Armstrong, understanding your Eastern Kentucky and Owsley County roots, this is something that, as you work through this, definitiveness of the landscape is critical to everybody, and operating there, so speed of conclusion or to conclusion is there. And that's why there will be a further discussion in the budgetary side of this to see what is needed to do that. And this is not, as Senator Webb said, this is the starting point of what I think could be a really good piece of legislation. I already met with, and I said, John, I apologize for the informality of it, Mr. Crockett, and had discussions. But this is where we need to start. If that's not attainable, we're into listening to something different. This is a policy that I hope this General Assembly adopts. Is it in its final form? Not hardly.
I have a motion and a second. All right, this time we're going to call the roll. I do want to ask Senator West, you've been quiet through this whole thing. Do you have any comments you'd like to add?
I've done really well so far, Mr. Chairman. I'll just make a quick statement. The bottom line is, the current and future economic growth and prosperity of the state depends on having adequate power. And that's what we're trying to accomplish. And we can't rely on the whims of the federal government. And Kentucky needs a plan. Kentucky needs an energy plan. And I don't see a plan from the executive branch. And so this is an effort by the legislative branch to formulate a long-term energy plan. And this is just a first step. And I'm proud to support the bill and proud to be with these colleagues. Thank you.
Very good. I ask the clerk to call the roll.
Senator Chambers Armstrong, Senator Carpenter, Senator Mills, Senator Schickel, Senator Southworth.
Sway my no vote.
Please do.
Mr. Chairman, I did not ask any questions because I really don't have any questions at this time. It sounds like there's a lot of work to be done and it's going to continue to be done, so I'm glad. But I really like the broadening of the focus of what we care about in addressing these issues. But I think that we need to be working more with our current framework. The PSC has been set up for a while. There's a lot of debate about it, but it seems like it's been the best for a while. And this whole separate lobbyist entity and this another executive board, it seems like a lot of layers. And I would agree we're in a hard spot with the federal regulations, but we also have to figure out what we can do. And setting up layers to add costs and legal experts and so forth, it just escalates the overall burden. We need to come up with a more streamlined way. If this bill really makes a study group for planning purposes versus an every case-by-case evaluation that gets in the middle of the PSC process, and now we're talking about cross-examination and everything else, I feel like that would be a game changer for me to get to a yes, but I look forward to seeing the next versions. Thank you.
Senator Turner. Aye. Senator Webb. Aye. Senator Westerfield. Aye. Senator Wheeler.
Aye.
Senator Williams.
Aye.
And Chair Smith.
I vote aye. Senate Bill 349 as amended with Senate Committee Substitute 1 is approved favorable with the expression the same shall pass. Congratulations on getting this out. I have a feeling there'll be a lot more discussion. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Second, all those in favor